I'm Cynthia Schneider. I teach diplomacy and culture at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Egypt today, this week, since Wednesday, is in worse shape than it has been, I think, in modern memory. And I'm an optimist on Egypt and a real believer in the revolution. But sadly, the country is really being torn apart now. And it involves, of course, the brutal military assault on the Muslim Brotherhood encampments. But what is the most tragic thing, I think, in the country is how completely divided the people are. There are two sides. You either are Brotherhood and a supporter of the Brotherhood, or you are against them. And sadly, many of the people who were behind the revolution, who are advocating an open, transparent, tolerant, inclusive, just society, those were all the goals of the revolution, they condone this attack. And they believe that it's so important to get rid of the Muslim Brotherhood that you just, whatever means are necessary. And I was shocked to see basically no recognition of the hypocrisy of that position. And this is particularly shocking since this very same military was persecuting the revolutionaries in the Mohammed Mahmoud protests in November of 2012 and December of 2012. I mean, these are the blue bra people. And I just, the memory is so short, and I'm afraid I don't see how they're going to roll back from another military dictatorship. It may be an elected military dictatorship, but I think that's what Egypt is moving towards. And actually, the point I was talking about, the point of culture, is very important here, because the mistakes that President Morsi made, and he made many, he was a terrible president and did nothing to help his country whatsoever, and I think he deserved to be removed by the popular protests. What affected people very strongly, what people say again and again, was his assault on Egyptian identity. Many Egyptians will say that President Morsi and the Brotherhood around him cared only about the Brotherhood and not about Egypt. That he did not rule Egyptians, he didn't rule Egypt. He just was trying to consolidate the power of the Muslim Brotherhood. And instead of implementing essential, economic reforms and trying to get the economy going, he instead, well, first of all, took absolute power for himself, and then had these social measures that he was trying to put through. And, Egypt is the beating heart of the Arab world. It's the center of Arab culture. And Egyptians are very proud of that. And then you have, and this was a sort of spark in the beginning of the revolt, you have a minister of culture who says that ballet and music are haram. This is the country of Kulthum, and people are trying to say that music is forbidden. And it was this cutting at the very heart of the Egyptian character. And in fact, what ignited these, a big part of the beginning of the protests that culminated in the 30th of June, was the occupation of the culture ministry. A group of artists protesting against these restrictive measures coming down from the Brotherhood appointed Minister of Culture literally staged a sit-in, and they occupied the Ministry of Culture for a month, and every night had performances outside. And they sang songs, they danced, they performed theater, there were comedic routines mocking Morsi, and the crowds grew and grew and grew, and this was a very important launching pad for the Tamarud movement in collecting their signatures. It really helped them to publicize their campaign. So in this case, and I think it's so often true, The artists and the cultural figures are the ones who are as kind of the tip of the spear of change. They're the canaries in the coal mine. They're the ones who go out ahead and push the envelope against authority. And in fact, looking back at the beginning of the Egyptian Revolution in 2011, anyone who had observed what was going on in literature, music, theater, film, coming out of Egypt, wasn't surprised by the revolution. And you don't have to speak Arabic. I don't speak Arabic, but take, for example, their most famous novel, The Yacubian Building, which was turned into their most famous movie of recent years. That novel by Ala al-Aswani, an important thinker in Egypt now, chronicled how at every level of society, whether you were a college graduate, whether you were illiterate, you could not advance in your life without paying the bribe, knowing the official, in some cases sleeping with the official, whatever it took to bribe your way into a position. Merit didn't matter in Egyptian society. Everything was under the control of the corrupt government. And when you saw that picture painted of Egyptian society in this book and in the film, then you can understand how everyone at every level of society had just reached a breaking point. But the traditional way that international relations are conducted is you look at the government of the country, and it's government-government relations. I mean, nobody, none of the Middle East experts would think, oh, gee, I'm going to read that novel to find out what's going on, and I have to go see that movie so I can understand that country. I mean, they go and they read, but it's not integrated into this very serious thing of really studying the political situation. But in fact, it is the creative voices that tell you what is going on in the country. I mean, look at Egypt from the perspective of government. Mubarak had been there for 30-odd years, looked pretty stable, nothing's happening. And in fact, underneath, it was exploding. So I try in my writing to suggest that a culture is not an extra nice side thing, but really the key to understanding a place and a people, and should be integrated much more into political thinking and analysis.